right? Today is a special day because we conclude the first book of Tanya, and Sefer Shabbainanim, which is the book of the intermediate, meaning the book of an individual can have ultimately mastery over thought, speech, and action. That's who the Beinani, the intermediate individual, is, as opposed to a righteous person who can have even mastery over feelings, deep-rooted feelings even, and intelligence. But halavai Beinani, so be it that we become a Beinani, or at least that we progress in that manner, that that we can have this this self-mastery, is what the Sefer Shabbainanim is about, or at least on some level. In conclusion, we're speaking about God's presence. So back in the times of the Holy Temple, God's presence was very palpable, very real in the sense that it was beyond nature. In the first temple, in the tablets, or in the Holy of Holies. And as a result, there were miraculous things that occurred. Second temple, not as great, because the tablets weren't there in the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies. So it was an expression of divine beyond this world, but not in the same manner as in the first Holy Temple. Today we don't have the Holy Temples. We're waiting for Mashiach to bring back the presence of God to the Holy Temple. We only have the remnant of the Holy Temple, which is the outer wall of the Western Wall, not the inner part of the Heichal. In any case, so God's presence, as we spoke about yesterday, is, as the sages say in the Talmud, that God has his presence in the study of Torah, which we're doing now, particularly in halacha. Halacha means Jewish law. Jewish law is the do's and the don'ts, but it doesn't mean just the do's and the don'ts. It's also the awareness of how to connect to God, not just through the physical action of doing a mitzvah, but the intent in the mitzvah, and so on. So there is a presence. However, that presence is not, shall we say, is miraculous as the presence of God that was in the Holy Temple. So, the Alter Rebbe, I'm going to just say a piece that Alter Rebbe is going to say in the class today, but does that make it a lesser thing? It's a lesser revelation, but a greater accomplishment. Because it's an accomplishment of engaging in this world, in the nature of this world, and transforming it. And that's ultimately what we have to do in order to bring Mashiach. In the context over here, the Alter Rebbe explains that the presence of God through the study of Torah that we're engaged in creates a light of God, which we quoted at the beginning of this chapter, which was originally quoted from chapter 35, and quoting the Zohar. The Zohar says, if you recall, that in order to create the light of God over that person, the head, right, around that encompasses the person, you need a wick and you need oil, fuel. What is the fuel? The fuel, as we learned in chapter 35, is mitzvahs, good deeds. The wick is the animating soul in the body, which is the conduit that we can do a good deed. We can do a mitzvah. Being charitable, you need an arm. that has vitality from the animating soul / animal soul, motivated by the godly soul, but it is the animating soul that gives the vitality that I can move my arm to give charity, or to put on tefillin, or to utter words of Torah or the words of prayer. So we need that. We need the wick, but we need the fuel, and that's the mitzvah. However, oil, as we quoted earlier, actually, sorry, not chapter 53, chapter 51 is where we quoted it, and chapter 35. Oil also represents chachma. You put olive oil in water, it rises to the top. Chachma, divine wisdom, and even human wisdom, is on top, above all, which refers divine wisdom, of course, to Torah. So, is it good deeds, oil, or is it Torah that it refers to? So, there's a connection between the two, the Alter Rebbe explains. Again, oil representing wisdom, divine wisdom, chachma, and it represents ma'asim tovim, good deeds, the mitzvahs. So the Alter Rebbe explains. Just as we had previously, the divine presence of God was the Holy of Holies that finds its expression in each world through Malchus. So in a similar manner over here, the Holy of Holies in us is the Torah that's studied. However, it needs to find expression in our Malchus. What is our Malchus? Sovereignty. What do we have sovereignty over? Thought, speech, and action. That's what we have sovereignty over. And that is where it needs to find expression, which means thought, of course, in the study of Torah, right? Understanding, because if right now you are here, but, not totally here because, you might see me, but I don't see you, so therefore it might be a little difficult for you to focus, and therefore you're not really, if you're not really focused, you're not thinking the what is being taught. If you are, so then wonderful. But that's not sufficient. It has to be speech and action too. Meaning, if we study Torah, the divine wisdom, and it's not translated into action, into doing the mitzvah, then we don't create the divine light. And this is what the Alter Rebbe says. Through my thoughts of Torah, what I'm doing is taking my animating / animal soul, right, that has vitality, that gives vitality to my physical reality, and now in my thoughts and speech that I am thinking, speaking words of Torah, and prayer and whatnot, that we verbalize. What am I doing? I'm transforming my animating soul, my body, because right at this moment, I could be doing my own thing. I can, be watching something else, maybe not as wholesome. The fact that I'm doing this, studying Torah, I'm transforming my animating / animal soul into the light of God. Into the light of God. When I do the mitzvah, the physical act of the mitzvah, now I'm engaging my physical body, not just my verbalizing in words of Torah, words of prayer, but now my physical body's been transformed. So I'm taking from that wisdom of Torah, and I'm now translating it that it should envelop not just my godly soul, because when I study Torah, it's more of a spiritual thing. But when I'm translating it into the act of a mitzvah, I am now transforming that physical being of me into a conduit, the wick, into the conduit that now becomes a flame, a light of God that envelops me as a result. That's what it means that God is a all-consuming fire. That when I'm doing the mitzvah, I'm consumed. My reality in the light of God. So therefore there is the relationship between the two things, that oil means wisdom, divine wisdom, Torah, right? And it means good deeds, because it needs to translate into that. So what does that mean for me and you? This is an auspicious moment. To finish those words here of the Alter Rebbe, Nishlam Chil L'Krisha Bezos Hashem Yisborach V'Yisalad, conclusion of the first part, with the help of God, may He be blessed and exalted. That's conclusion. First of all, Mazel Tov to everybody here, especially those who've been, with us for the last 6 months, approximately, just under 6 months, learning this first part of Tanya. Of course, we're going to continue. So, tomorrow is a bright new day. But in conclusion, what do we have here? Powerful idea that we've learned much, but more importantly, is we've transformed much of us. Think about 6 months ago where you were in a spiritual state, in your connection to God, and even in an emotional, psychological, behavioral state. And I'm sure we're not the same people. I'm sure all of us have transformed, because these teachings are transformational. These teachings of Tanya are transformational in and of themselves, but more importantly is because we make them transformational. In other words, that we live it. It's not enough to learn Tanya, we got to live it. As I always say, I'm not speaking to anybody here but myself, because me teaching, and this is one of the problems of being a teacher, is that you're always concerned about teaching. How about it teaching me rather than I'm teaching it? And that's what it needs to be, something that teaches me, that it's transforming me. And again, there's no doubt that that's what's happened. But we need to think about that a little more in order that it really becomes integrated in a part of us. And if anybody has something to share in that manner, that would be amazing. In other words, in what way is this been transformational for you? And I'm just looking over here if anybody has something. Thank you for all the thank yous. The biggest thank you is that it indeed has been transformational in your life, but that's not enough, actually. As Chabad Chassidim, and the idea of shlichus, of being an emissary of God, being an emissary also for those who choose of the Rebbe, is that we have to disseminate the teachings. First and foremost by living it. Secondly, by trying to teach it ourselves, or at least sharing. At least sharing the daily class. That's really important. And that's it, folks. No, God forbid, that's not it. To be continued. Looking forward to part 2. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Mazel Tov to everyone. Thank you for being a part. And bigger and better things to come. Have a wonderful day.